governance. However, the Buhari administration disregarded this ruling by appointing fewer women. The ruling finally pushed for the implementation of the 35% affirmative action for women inclusion as contained in the National Gender Policy of 2006. According to reports, less than 20% of the policy has been effectively implemented, indicating a concerning lack of commitment to women's rights and gender equality. Today marks 2 years since the verdict mandating a 35% affirmative action quota, a pivotal movement that aims to reshape societal paradigms and foster inclusivity on a grand scale. And now, as we reflect on the strides made since that landmark judgment, it is very crucial to ponder what next. The verdicts sparked hope, controversy, and discourse across sectors. Yet, the journey towards genuine equity and representation is far from over. Today on Women Radio 91.7, we discuss 2 years after 35% affirmative action landmark judgments, and we ask, what next? My name is Blessing Agbeto, and joining me on the show this evening, I have Barrister Marshall Abubakar, senior lawyer, Falano and Falano Chambers. And yes, I have Amina Baji, national president, FIDA. Barrister Marshall is here to join us on the show, but this evening I definitely have Barrister Aminat. Good evening and good to have you on the show today. Hello, Aminat. Good evening. Good to have you on the show. Aminat, are you there? Can you hear me? Okay, I'm kind of struggling to hear from you. Kindly unmute your mic, please. Aminat Agbaje, kindly unmute your mic. Good evening and good to have you on the show today.
Hello, good evening.
Okay,
Hello,
I'm still struggling to hear you on the show. Okay. So let's also move on. Still on the show, I have with me Zainab Yahaya Tanko, the program officer, Nigerian Women Trust Fund. Good evening and good to have you on the show today.
Good evening. It's great to be here.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, good evening. It's good to be here.
All right, good to have you on the show, and thank you very, very much for joining me this evening on the show. Also, I have on the show this evening, I have joining me Zainab Yahaya Katanko. I introduced her already. And of course, I have Rashidat Wuraola Medukwen, that's a program officer, Sustainable Gender Action Initiative. Good evening, and good to have you on the show this evening, Rashidat. Please unmute your mic. All right, so while we wait for Rashida to join us on the show this evening, and yes, we also have joining us on the show Ngozi Unwosu Juba, that's the project director, Vision Spring Initiatives. Good evening and good to have you on the show. Please do me a favor, kindly unmute yourself so that we can hear you and you can be a part of the conversation for today. In the meantime, remember, you can join the conversation by calling us on 07000 917 917. 07000 917 917. Send us a text and WhatsApp message on 0703 175 6537. That is how you can be a part of the conversation for today. Let me start off with Zainab on the show while we await Barrister Abubakar Marshall to join us on the show today. Okay, so I would like us to start the conversation for today. Zainab, what strategies or initiatives do you think the plaintiffs need to? I think before we even delve into that, I think you should tell us briefly about the 35% affirmative action. All right, Zainab.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Good evening,
Zainab.
all.
Good evening.
The 35% affirmative action is a section of the national gender policies which talk about giving women 35% in across elective and appointive roles in. But that is that the gender this gender policy, I'm referring to the gender policy of 2006.
Mm.
For the 2021-2022 gender policy, it has been increased to 50%. But
Wow.
we are still agitating for that of the 35% because that is what we have been on and nothing has happened. So that is what about the court judgments that we are celebrating the anniversary for today.
All right. Thank you very much for your thoughts on the show today. I really do appreciate you. Now let's talk about the strategies or initiatives that have been put in. Now, in order to ensure, since you mentioned that what we are still clamoring for today is a 35% affirmative action, even though it has been increased to 50%, let's talk about the strategies and initiatives you think plaintiffs should employ to advocate for the effective implementation of the 35% affirmative action at both the national and state levels.
Okay, so advocating for effective implementation of the 35% affirmative action at both national and state level require lots of approaches. And I'll start with talking about we're starting with public awareness campaign. That's launching public awareness campaigns to educate the general public about the importance and the benefits of this affirmative action. Because I know most people don't know about it because when we had our
Mm.
last strategic meeting, people they brought it to our notice. Some stakeholders that was invited brought to our notice that the stakeholders in the health sector
Mm.
said they never knew there was anything about the gender
35%.
policy.
Mm. Okay.
They don't even know about the gender policy. They
Talk more
talk
of,
more of the 35% affirmative action. That
mm,
was the first time
they
they
were
were
hearing
hearing
it.
about it.
Mm.
So when we have this awareness campaign, it will help us build support for the policy.
Mm.
And this also involves like disseminating information through media channels,
Mm.
through social media platforms, through community events, and even educational programs. And but for NWTF, we have started this process already. We have it running on radio, we have it running on television, and we also have it on social media platforms.
All right.
Then the next, so then
Please
the
go on.
next strategy, I'll talk about coalition building. So that's having like-minded organization, that's advocacy groups coming together, stakeholders coming together to support this affirmative action and amplifying the plaintiff's efforts. And we're already doing that because we have a coalition of women group, we have stakeholders that already coming together, like we coming together to hold this event this evening is part of the coalition building, which we have been doing over time. Then we'll talk about engaging with policymakers. We talk about legal advocacy. We talk about community mobilization. That's stakeholders that have a good communication, a good link with the grassroots can also take this to the grassroots and help us mobilize rallies, marches, like even protests or demonstrations to just give widespread public support to the affirmative action.
Very, very much for your thoughts on that one, talking about public awareness campaign, advocacy, and all of that. I really do appreciate. Let me come to Amina on the show. Amina Agbaje, let's talk about the implementation of the landmark judgment on 35% affirmative action. What has the progress been so far in the last 2 years? I mean, we're celebrating the 2 years anniversary today since its ruling. How much awareness do you think Nigerian women have when it comes to the 35% affirmative action? So basically, I'm asking how aware are Nigerian women of the 35% affirmative action to enable us to push, for this at different levels. Because one thing I believe, when women are aware, when people are aware about a policy, that is when they can come together to say, okay, let's clamor for this, let's push for this. But if they are not aware, how do they now come forth to say, okay, we want to advocate for this, we want to push for this, and all of that? Over to you, Aminat.
All right. Thank you very much, Esther. And thank you for putting this conversation together. Let me first of all appreciate Women Radio, for providing us with this platform. Uh, so that women can talk about the things that concerns, women. For me, let me start by saying that it was a sigh of relief, for the Nigerian women following the April 6, 2022 court ruling that ordered the federal government to comply with the 35% affirmative action to ensure that women uh, um, to ensure women in elective and appointive positions in the country, and accordingly, the landslide ruling gave a nudge to the implementation of the 35% affirmative action for women inclusion as contained in the National Gender Policy of the year 2006. Do not forget that this gender policy that we're talking about, it is a document that it is a document of the government. But unfortunately, that same government that did not implement and adhere to the judgment has instead instituted an appeal against the judgment just 3 months, later after the judgment. I mean, this is an irony that you can appeal against a policy that you have, the government has set in place. If you look at it, policy is a deliberate document. It is not. You don't just come up with policy like that. You come up with policy after deliberations, after thorough thinking, and so on and so forth. Now, I mean, for us as women, this is sad and discouraging because there has not been any implementation whatsoever of the judgment, not even in the present government implementation. I mean, what is this? What is the use of a judgment when that judgment cannot be implemented? The essence of a judgment is your labor, the fruit of your labor. What is the essence of a fruit when you cannot eat it, when you cannot taste it, when it cannot satisfy you? I mean, so for us, I mean, if you ask me, I'll tell you that what are we celebrating? We have a judgment that we cannot implement. We have a judgment. We have a judgment that we can do nothing about. That we can do nothing. That is of no use. That is of no use to us. What do we do? So what are we celebrating? Of course, we're here to complain. We're here to mourn. We're here to groan. In fact, the 2003 election results announced by INEC indicated that only 17 women made it to the National Assembly. Guess what? With 3 female senators elected and 14 female House of Representatives members. This leaves the 10th Assembly with only 3.62% female representation and the male with 96.3% in the legislative arm. Accordingly, according to a report by the Daily Trust, saying that out of about 988 state assembly seats across all the 36 states of the federation, only 48 female lawmakers were elected, which represents a meager 85%. If you look at this, does it call for celebration? It doesn't call for celebration. So today is a day that serves as a sad reminder that the women movement labored, went to court, and got judgment for the affirmation of 35% action in elective and appointed positions. And even though we got judgment, we were denied the fruit of our labor.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Amina, for your thoughts on the show. Past 7 from Women Radio 91.7, Nigeria's first and only radio station for women and their families. And yes, if you're just joining us today, we're discussing 2 years after 35% affirmative action landmark judgments. And the question on the lips of everyone is, what's next? And on the show today, I have Barrister Marshall Abubakar, the senior lawyer, Falano and Falano Chambers. Also, I have Amina Agbaje, National President, FIDA. Yes, I also have Zainab Yahaya Tanko, Program Officer, Nigerian Women Trust Fund. Rashidat Wuraola Medupe, Program Officer, Sustainable Gender Action Initiative. And also, I have Ngozi Nwosujiba, Project Director, Vision Spring Initiatives. Now, let's go to Barrister Marshall Abubakar on the show today. Now, looking at the state of women's representation in this present administration on the 35% affirmative action, would you say that progress has been made in implementing the mandate? I mean, 2 years after the landmark judgment.
Well, fortunately, sorry, good evening. Good
Good
evening, and
evening.
thank
Good
you for
evening.
having me.
Very welcome.
Yes, you can hear me. Hello, good
Please
evening.
go on, I'm with you. Yes, good
Yeah,
evening.
unfortunately, um, the victory we had about 2 years ago for the Nigerian women seems to be a pyrrhic for now. Sadly so. There's been no implementation with this new administration without landmark judgments, which made very lucid provisions, declarations as the rights of women and how those rights must be implemented by the government. In short, the court also made an order for injunction, restraining the holders of the office of the president from making any appointments that violate that particular judgment. Unfortunately, that order has not been complied with in any manner. It has also not been set aside. Neither is there an order of stay of action against that judgment. Unfortunately, the government has, like they want to, ignored that same judgment.
Hmm.
Now, this is quite sad. It's quite sad for the administration. It's also quite sad for women. I think there have been engagements as to see how this judgment can be complied with and enforced.
Okay.
Unfortunately, not much has been achieved in this regard. I am aware that there have been some level of high-powered engagements with the previous administration and even with this current one, where efforts were made to reach out to the president and the first lady. Unfortunately, not much has been achieved in that regard. I am also of the firm opinion that since there is no order of court staying executing of that judgment, neither is there any order of court staying aside that same judgment. That judgment should be enforced. Unfortunately, not much has been done in seeing how that judgment can be enforced. We've been taking the option of engagements and dialogue, which so far has not yielded much results. There have been appointments, and that appointment has not reflected the yearnings and aspirations of the Nigerian women and the intendment of that particular judgment which we had in court. I think much can be done, either in the area of further engagements and with the persons in authority or with the area. I must also add that there was an attempt by the government to appeal that same judgment. But that attempt to appeal was abandoned by this same government because they know that that appeal will likely not fly because they made a lot of blunders at the trials. Appealing that judgment and almost a very happy tax on their part. They just filed a notice of appeal. To me, notice of appeal is not an appeal. And then notice of appeal is also not a stay of execution of that particular judgment. So I think further engagement should either be done to see how the judgment will be complied with, and the alternative, we can file for contempt of court against the defendants. The defendants in that suit were the AGF and the president himself. So I strongly believe make further agitations. We can also press home further in our engagements, both civil and judicial, in ensuring that the president is aware of this particular judgments and he fully complies with it. It is not the place of the president to choose obedience and compliance with the rule of law. It's also not the place of the president to choose which court orders to comply with. Once there is a positive order of court, the president is bound as the custodian of the constitution to comply with same. And when he fails to, in other countries, that's a very, very serious infraction that can warrant impeachment proceedings against the holder of such an office. So I think we need to do more. I also need to put it to the fore that if no action is taken thus far, it's 2 years already. I mean, that's a long time. So I think we've slept on this right thus far. The right that this particular government has given to us. We've slept on it for too long. It is time for us to take more actions. I think we've tried, but we can still do more. Take further actions to ensure that this particular judgment is enforced because it's binding and it's subsisting.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Abubakar, for your thoughts on the show this evening. I mean, calling for further engagement with authorities to see how the judgment can be complied with. And of course, calling the attention of the government to the judgment to enable him to comply with the judgment. Once again, I say thank you for your thoughts on the show this evening. Now let's go over to Ngozi Uwosujuba. In the meantime, you can call us on 07000 917 917. Send us a text and WhatsApp message on 0703 175 6537. Log into our website www.wfm917.com. Download the mobile app WFM917. And yes, you can join the conversation via our social media platforms, Facebook and YouTube, WFM917. Now over to you, Ngozi. Are there any success stories or notable achievement in relation to the 35% affirmative action in the past 2 years?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. And I would say that in terms of success story would be the fact that we have a test case with which we can hold the government to account. And as Marshall said, I think that's more than enough. Many of us civil society people have been speaking. I've been on radio, I've been on women radio for more than 5 times now, speaking about this judgment that we won. And so, and also I know other civil society organizations, other people, there are about 9 of us that are plaintiffs, and then we know we've been doing a lot. Last week we were in Abuja, all of us, where we were also deliberating and making sure that we carry other people along. So there's a lot, the law is, the judgment is there for anyone. Hello, can you hear me?
Where was you, Ngozi? Please go on.
Yes, the judgment is there, it's documented. Many people are aware of it. Many civil society persons are aware of it. We work at grassroots and we've spoken about this judgment. Even at the CSW in March, in New York, many about this judgment, and some other African countries are saying, oh, this is so nice that we're going to, also think of doing things like this. But unfortunately in Nigeria, where we don't want this judgment, not too much has happened, on the part of government, and as my sister Amina said, really there's nothing to celebrate because the government, doesn't even keep its own law. It's not civil society organizations that wrote the national gender policy. It was the government themselves who made that commitment. We have documents like the Beijing platform where it says 30%, but Nigeria said 35%, and we were like, okay, this is at 10%. So it's a bit problematic, but we'll keep trying and keep pushing, and then until we get the attention of the government. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your thoughts on that one. You talked about how people are very much aware, and then civil society organizations going out of their way to call attention to the judgment that was passed about 2 years ago. And you said that nothing much has been done so far. So I would like to ask you, Ngozi, what can be done better, actually?
And so it starts by government, responding and enforcing, a commitment that they made in 2000. Yeah. And if you look at from what my sister Amina explained, even this last election seems to have even taken us back to where we're coming from. I know that the last we're probably at maybe 10% or thereabout, but right now I don't think we're even up to like 9%, and that's such a bad figure, considering the fact that after the election before this one, we went to court and we won this judgment, and then our case has become worse. It's really, really problematic. We haven't done much, but I think that what government needs to do, and that's why we are on this program, is we have to probably go back to court and insist that they enforce this judgment. That's where we are at Nigerian Women Trust Fund. The last time we met in Abuja, and that was last week, we agreed we are going to even ask the government from the Freedom of Information Act. They should tell us number of men in leadership. We need to know from them, from their own statistics. Let them tell us the number of women in appointed and elected positions. With that information, we would then know, the next steps. But one of the steps for us is that we might go back to court, to demand enforcement. And of course, Marshall has also said a number of things that we might do. We could go civil or go judicial and then file for contempt of court, because you cannot violate your own law. The court, does not belong to civil society organizations. It was set up by the government themselves. National gender policy is a document, a commitment by Nigerian government. So it's contradictory that you have a document you are not, responding to, and also contradictory that you are not obeying the law, which is the law of the land. How do we then expect citizens to obey the laws if we don't? It's problematic.
All right. Once again, I say thank you for your thoughts on the show today. Rashidat, let me come to you on this one. How can civil society organizations and advocacy groups, since we mentioned civil society organizations already, doing some of this work at the grassroots level and all of that. So how can they go further to influence government action and policy decisions on implementation of affirmative action measures? And I would also like to ask, what strategies can be employed to enhance their role in promoting the rule of law and, of course, gender equality? Over to you, Rashidat. All right, 07000 917 917. That is the number to call to be a part of the conversation. Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Blessings.
Good evening.
Good evening. Please, it's Teresa. Please, I've been trying this number.
All right, 07000 917 917. That is the number to call to be a part of the conversation for today. All right, while we await Rashida to join us again on the show this evening, remember you can call us on 07000 917 917 on WhatsApp message on 0703 175 6537. Log into our website www.thebfm917.com. Download the mobile app, the BFM 917. Send your thoughts to our social media platforms, WFM 917. You can also join us via social media platforms, WFM 917. Hello, good evening. All right, I guess you might just have to call us back for you to be a part of the conversation. This is 7:30 from Women Radio 91.7. And yes, if you're just joining us, we're discussing 2 years after 35% affirmative action landmark judgment. And like I said earlier, the question on the lips of everyone is, what's next? My name is Blessing Agbeto, and my guest on the show today, I have Barrister Marshall Abubakar, senior lawyer, Falano and Falano Chambers. I have Rashidat Muraola Medupe, that's the program officer, Sustainable Gender Action Initiative. And yes, I also have Ngozi Nwosijuba, that's the project director, Vision Spring Initiative. I was asking Rashida on the show earlier, so I will have to repeat the question so that she can answer us on the show today. So, earlier, how can civil society organizations, particularly because Ngozi mentioned civil society organizations doing background work, especially at the grassroots level and all of that. So I asked, what are the ways, or how can civil society organizations and advocacy groups influence government action and policy decisions on implementation of affirmative action measures? And also, what strategies can be employed to enhance their role in promoting the rule of law and gender equality, as the present administration definitely needs to stay on course? Over to you, Rashidat. Please unmute yourself. Hi, Rashidat. Okay, 07000 917 917. That is the number to call to be a part of the conversation today. 07000 917. Send us a text and WhatsApp message on 0703 175 6537. Log into our website www.thebfm917.com. Now, while we await Rashida to join us on the show this evening, let's go back to Barrister Abubakar Marshall on the show. So, yes, Barrister Abubakar Marshall, I would like to ask you this one. Has there been any legal procedures taken up in enforcing the affirmative action judgment in the present administration? Because I know you mentioned earlier that there is a need for further engagement with the authorities to see how the judgment can be enforced and complied with. And you also talked about how there is a need to press further, ensure that the attention of the present government is brought into this particular one so that they are aware that this judgment is in place and there is a need to definitely comply with this judgment. So, if you think about it, has there been any legal procedures taken up in enforcing the affirmative action judgment in the present administration?
Thus far, there's been no serious legal action from our part, except for our
Hi, Barrister Marshall.
engagements with
Okay, please go ahead.
different. Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
I said thus far there's no legal engagement from our part. It was the government that appealed the judgments. So we actually need to wait for them to compile and transmit record for us to join the issues properly with the appeal. But thus far, it's proven to be what
Okay, Barrister Marshall, we're struggling to hear you.
they file the comments and appeal process and uh, this guy. Hello, sorry.
Yes.
Am I still on, please?
Yes, you're on, but at
Hello.
some point
Can you
we,
hear me?
we couldn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. So, okay. Yeah. So they commence the legal process and abandon the process in the long run simply because they know they don't have a sustainable appeal, which is what they've done in this case so far. So I think what we need to do now, which is a form of engagement, which will be legal process with them, is to see how we can and dismiss the appeal because there's no appeal thus apart from the notice of appeal they filed. So I think that process will be carried out in a fortnight in the jiffy, which is I think is very impressive at this stage. We also had the legislative engagements with the current chairperson, Senate Committee on Women Affairs, Senator Irisi Kingibe, whom has also promised to take up the matter by writing to the president, who I learned from over 40 years standing. So I think aside these steps, I don't think nothing much has been done thus far. But in this new year, I would think we need to put more pressure legally so that the courts of appeal can make a final pronouncement on this right, which will give further vent to the affirmative action judgments we got at the lower court. So I think these are the areas of engagement we have taken thus far up legally from our, which we also think we can also build on and then try to see how that can be achieved this new year.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Marshall, for your thoughts on the show this evening. I really, really do appreciate you. Now, going back to Zainab Yahaya Tanko on the show this evening, Zainab, Barrister Marshall talked about how there is a need to put more pressure, legally to take more legal steps to ensure that the judgment is being adhered to. Now, my question to you is, as the lead plaintiff in the case, what exactly is NWTF doing differently to ensure implementation?
Okay. So, in ensuring implementation of this court judgment, NWTF have been having a media visibility via radio, television, social media platforms to let the government, calling on the government and also other stakeholders on to know to be aware about the judgment that was given. And also we have collaborated with Ministry of Women Affairs and other desk officers from across MDAs, from ministries, and on the best practices. That this happened on the 2nd of April.
Okay.
On best practices and how to set up relevant structures to ease the implementation of the court judgments. And NWTF also is going to start working on conducting a comparative analysis through research on the situation of women's appointment, that's before and after the court judgment, and also set up a database to collect existing statistics. That is what NWTF is doing differently on implementation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Zainab, for your thoughts on the show today. Aminat Abadi. Now, Zainab talked about how they have been taking steps to ensure that, this particular judgment is being implemented. Talking about the meeting, the programs, the preparation, and all of the other things they've put together, particularly the meeting that was held on the 2nd of April. Now, I will come to you this way. I would like to ask you, what would you say the present administrative has done differently? Now, if we try to look at, when the judgment was passed down and where we are today, what would you say the president has done differently to ensure progress, particularly towards gender equality and representation? Now, I'm talking about the public sector exactly. Aminat, kindly unmute yourself. Hi, Aminat, are you there? Okay, 07000 that is the number to call to be a part of the conversation. 07000
Hello.
917. All right, Aminat, over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Blessing.
Yes.
And to answer your question directly, I will tell you that this present government has not done anything differently, to increase the visibility of women either in elective or appointive positions. It would have been different if we have a hike in number to show, a difference between the previous administration, and the present administration. And if you ask me directly, I will tell you that what the government lacks is the political will. Once the government has the political will, I am telling you that issues of gender parity will be a thing of the past. It is also, you can see that we went to courts, we got judgment, and the government is not willing to implement that judgment. Who is supposed to implement the judgment? It is. Allow us to reap the fruits of our labor. Now, if you look at it, I mean, we've never had it. We had it so good during the administration of President. And since after then, we've just been retrogressing. So the present administration, even though has not fully implemented the 35% affirmative action, in some, you would give it to them that in some appointive positions, there has been, not so significant, but negligible improvement, because at least we have like about maybe 6 women having senior portfolios, even though it's nothing to write home about. But I believe that the renewed, the government that prides itself, with the mantra that there is renewed hope. I believe that women should be included. The hope of women should be included, should be renewed in that hope. And you can only demonstrate it by showing that you are willing, to interpret and to implement that 35% affirmative action, the very least. Once you do that, then we can see that this is a government that is willing and has shown to be doing something different. Unless and until we get to that stage, we cannot say that this present government is even doing anything differently. Do not forget that when it is campaign time, in fact, when it was campaign time, there was nothing that this present government did not promise, women. The campaign team was filled with women, and now the campaigns are over. And an opportunity has been given to the government to appoint more women I thought they would have done better
Hmm.
since we didn't get it at the level of elections, that the government would have done better, compensated the women folk by appointing more women in appointed positions than, than men. You can see that even in the cabinet, how many women do we have? So if you ask me straightforward, I will tell you this present administration has not done anything differently. So we're where where.
Mm. All right, we are where we were. Thank you very much for your thoughts on the show this evening, Aminat. I do appreciate you. Rashid, I don't know if you can hear me now. I will have to come to you now so that you can share your thoughts on the show this evening. Rashidat, are you there?
Yes, good evening. I'm there.
Good evening, and thank you very much for joining the conversation today. So, Rashidat, I asked earlier because Ngozi said something about civil society organization working so hard at the grassroots to ensure that people are aware of gender
Yeah.
policy, not just the 35% affirmative action now, of gender policy, the 35% affirmative action, and all of that. So I am asking. It looks like people still don't know. A lot of people still don't know. I think it was Amina that was saying something about that earlier, that some women are not even aware that there is something called gender policy. They are not even aware that there's something called 35% affirmative action. So I am asking you this evening, Rashidat, what are the ways or in what way can civil society organizations and advocacy groups influence government action and policy decisions on implementation of affirmative action measures? And I would also like to ask you what strategies can be employed to enhance their role in promoting the rule of law and gender equality, particularly in this present administration. Because if you ask me, there is a need to do something urgently.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes, thank you very much for this platform. For my organization, we are involved in increasing awareness at the grassroots to let people at the grassroots know more about the 35% affirmative action and the national gender action policy, and particularly about the judgment given on the 6th of April. Organization basically focus on that, and because our team is to facilitate inclusion founded on gender actions and gender-based women capacity development, research, advocacy, and empowerment of women. So that being said, the strategy that we need to enhance or to make sure this 35% affirmation is implemented and follows strictly censored. I feel this major strategy now is more advocacy and social media enlightenment. As from the grassroots awareness, which Sustainable Gender Action Initiative are into. I believe when we evolve more on this social media initiative, it helps to boost and create more and better awareness. And to us, it's going to reach the necessary authority to advocate for more women inclusion in politics.
All right. Thank you very much for your thoughts on the show this evening. I really do appreciate you. For you to be a part of the conversation, remember, you can call us on 07000 917 917. Send us a text and WhatsApp message on 0703 Log into our website, www.thebfm91.7. And yes, remember to download the mobile app, the BFM 917. Send your thoughts to our social media platforms, the BFM 917. We're live on YouTube and Facebook, WFM 917. That is how you can join the conversation for today. Now, Rashidat, still, speaking with you on the show today. Let's talk
Okay.
about some of the barriers and challenges thus far that has contributed to the marginalization of women in public sector appointment. Now, if we look at it, what is the exact reasons? Because I know that sometimes people will come up with this theory that, oh, maybe some women are not involved, maybe they are running away from politics, maybe they don't even have money to, do all of those things they need to do to put themselves on the public space and all of that. I know Ngozi was mentioning something earlier about how during political campaigns and all of that, you have women, women are being brought together to say, okay, we're going to do this for women, we're going to give women this, we're going to do that. But once the campaign period is over, everybody goes to their business. Nobody says, "Oh, let's bring women in." I mean, since we use them during campaign and all of that. So if we look at it, what are the reasons? What are the barriers to having women being fully involved? Is it because of education? Is it because they are not fully involved? Is it because they do not have the money to put themselves on that public space? Is it because they do not enough support? Because if we look at it, sometimes when you have enough support, when you see people saying, okay, we want to bank on you, we want to invest on you, when you have 10, 15 people coming together to say they want to invest in you, they want you to go, like we are behind you, we're going to give you all of the resources that you need and all of that, it might be easier, even though it might be hard, but at least you have a headway like that. So my question to you is, what are the specific barrier or systematic that have contributed to the marginalization of women in public sector appointment?
Okay, thanks for the question. I feel the fundamental challenge we have is the patriarchal system, which is a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. I guess that was the major issue whereby the men believe they should be the one to dominate as they are the head of the family to make decisions, and by that they exclude the women from. And secondly, I want to say issue of religion. Religion interpretation also limits women's space in this space. Most Nigerians, as in some other parts of the world, still do not accept women's leadership capacity, and they still believe that women should remain at the background. And this is absolutely very wrong. Considering the progress made by women in their careers and achievements they have accomplished so far in Nigeria, which are visible and known to all. A major reason is the failure of government to implement its own policies, such as the national gender policy. As is to say, they that make the policy refuse or neglected to follow the policies to say so. And the judgment of the court, which was held on the 6th of April. So all this together put are the major barriers or obstacles that we face in Nigeria and challenges for the marginalization of women. If the government decides now to uphold the 30% affirmative judgment, the national policy, the section 42 of the Constitution and section 14 sub 3 of the Constitution, all together, it will help and boost these challenges we face. Thank you.
All right, Sam, thank you very much, Rashida, for your thoughts on the show. I know you mentioned the fact that if the government is ready to do something about it, it would, boost gender inclusion, women inclusion in appointed positions and all of that. But I still want to ask you, I know you mentioned that the patriarchal system is one of the problems we have, particularly limiting and contributing to marginalization of women in public sector appointment. And then you talked about religion, because some people, there are still some theories that women are not supposed to lead. They are just supposed to be behind. They're supposed to be on the background, supporting the men and all of that. But I want to ask you, these barriers that you've mentioned, I know you mentioned one solution here, right? But then these barriers that you've mentioned, what can we do to ensure that they are addressed totally in order to ensure gender inclusive decision making processes? Because at the end of the day, we don't just want to come together and keep talking. We want solutions to ensure that every woman is involved, every woman is represented.
I believe majorly we have to keep creating awareness, the advocacy to speak up. Let the women that are leading their success in their career should come out as an example that we can do better, that we being women should not be neglected. So I feel majorly it should be more advocacy for women, for them to see more in our strength and in our leadership and in the skills we possess to make things better. I feel basically that's what we need. Then by enforcing or pushing for enforcement of 35% affirmative action as a woman or inclusion in leadership, it will boost and to give us more awareness.
All right, thank you very much for your thoughts. I mean, that's something to take home from what you said. Advocacy, advocacy, advocacy. And then you're talking about women who are already doing well in the different sectors, coming up to, be good examples, trying as much as possible to represent and then put themselves out there. By the time these women come together to lead and, of course, pick people they are mentoring, either directly or indirectly, because sometimes people pick one or two things from people they admire. So when these powerful women come out and present themselves as good role models, before you know it, we are building the next generation of great women who can actually champion these causes and make the world a better place and safer place for women. Thank you once again for your thoughts on the show this evening, Rashidat. I do appreciate you. All right, this is 9 minutes, right
Thank
to
you
be
very
from
much.
8 on Women Radio 91.7, Nigeria's first and only radio station for women and their families. Thank you very much for sticking with us up until this time. I really do appreciate you. Wow, if you're just joining us, we're discussing 2 years after the 35% affirmative action landmark judgments. And the question we're asking this evening is what's next? My name is Blessing Agbeto, and our guest on the show this evening, I have Barrister Marshall Abubakar, the senior lawyer at Falano and Falano Chambers. I have on the show this evening Aminat Agbaje, the national president, FIDA. I also have Zainab Yahaya Tanko, the program officer, Nigerian Women Trust Fund. And yes, I also have Rashidat Wuraola Medjokwen, who just spoke to us right now, the program officer, Sustainable Gender Action Initiative. And yes, we have Ngozi Musidruba, that's the project director at Vision Spring Initiatives. Or 7,917,917. That is the number to call to be a part of the conversation. Send us your thoughts via text or WhatsApp message on 0703 175 6537. Log into our website www.wfm917.com. Remember to also download our mobile app WFM 917 to listen to us everywhere you go. Now, Barrister Abubakar Marshall, let me come to you on the show this evening. I mean, you've mentioned quite a lot, especially the part that you said that there is a need to revisit this conversation. There is a need to, do further engagement, not just say, okay, we're celebrating the 2 years since the judgment was passed and all of that. Like, revisiting the conversation again to ensure that something is done and that judgment is, enforced. Now, let me come to you. Are there any specific policies or legislative measures that has been proposed so far to further support the objective of the affirmative action mandate?
Yes, thus far there's also been an engagement with certain stakeholders at the National Assembly. For instance, we've proposed that we prior to now we've had bills that was sent to the National Assembly to uh, pass on acts which will recognize these exclusive positions for women, both elected and appointed. We've been conversing for an amendment to the Constitution where some of these rights will be entrenched in the Constitution. The moment these rights are entrenched, for instance, now, we have in some other African countries, there are certain positions that are reserved exclusively for women. So I think that at that stage, there's been engagement at the National Assembly level where it's been proposed, and has also been promised by the Senator representing the FCT, Mrs. Kingibe, that she has called for some of those bills that have been proposed before that the national that has not been passed. We think there's also a need for further engagement to see how some of these bills can be represented to the National Assembly and to see how we can further push for their passage. Although she expressed some reservations, but we think all of this can be addressed properly and can also be pursued vigorously so that we can make headways in this regard. But aside that, I strongly believe that you see in other countries, for instance, like we had in Sierra Leone, in South Africa, and other countries in Africa that have passed laws to reflect this particular affirmative action. Successes has arrived. Courts. It is the courts that first passed the post to the National Assembly to be passed in, and now becomes part of their body policy. And who
Okay. Barrister Marshall.
parity in their country. The opinion, the very firm opinion that we can at the National Assembly level and even both at the president as a law in the country. A judgment passed
Okay, Barrister Marshall, your line is breaking.
On the oh, so sorry.
Yes, please. You can go on, please.
What I was trying to say is that law made by the National Assembly. Once it the judgment of court as much as it does to obey the law, to restrict it to one, we can also have it on both fronts, which also to ensure that these judgments, like you have in other African countries that have now attained that this particular law is also taken side by side alongside the previous National Assembly, where this particular judgment will now reflect in this particular where it cannot be passed into law of the National Assembly. Engagement and the legal aspect of it, where we can front and ensure that the presidency, which has the authorization and laws, does so as expeditiously as possible. Allow. We should also confirm to assert that this will and try to choose of law because there is the president for making any appointments that validity.
Okay.
Now, this president has been violating that. So I think it is important to remind the government of this obligation to comply with that. Because if you look at it from that particular appointment made by the president, can be set aside, can be challenged in courts. The ministers that were appointed.
Okay, Barrister Marshall, I guess your network is really poor. So while you're saying something, it will break at some point and then come back again, break at some point and then come back again. But anyways, thank you very much for your thoughts on the show this evening. I do appreciate you. I mean, you said something that I feel we should hold on to on the show today. You said we should try as much as possible to remind the government of the obligation to comply to the judgment that was passed 2 years ago. So thank you very much for your thoughts on the show this evening. Now, Ngozi, let me come to you on the show this evening. And my question to you is that what are the next steps for the plaintiffs to follow up, particularly in ensuring the implementation on the part of the government building upon the momentum has been generated by the Affirmative Act?
Okay, thank you very much. So I mentioned some of them earlier on, and I did say that we met last week in Abuja, and Nigerian Women Trust Fund was hosted us to a meeting, and then your radio was also there. So we are looking at, I think the Nigerian Women Trust Fund is taking a lead on coming up with a, freedom of information, where we're making demands to know the number of women in politics. Government should give us these figures. And with that, we also plan to, we're happy that Falana and Falana Chambers is very much still with us on this. We're really, happy to have them, still support us this far. And then if we get with this information, we can then consider going back to court to demand enforcement, because that's the only thing that is remaining, And then we are also looking at, there are 9 or 10 of us, we're looking at opening the space to have more voices, We also agreed that we should have more grassroots advocacy, where women themselves understand this is not about women radio, this is not about Ngozi, this is not about those of us on this speaking here.
Yes.
It's about Nigerian women. If we have 49% women as Nigerians, we shouldn't have 9% or 5% women in elective and appointive position. It doesn't speak well, because if the more we have less women, what is happening is that Nigeria is shortchanging itself. Because what it means that those intelligent 49% are not part of leadership. What they should have brought, in terms of leadership and governance is not taken into account. So it's really, really Nigeria cheating itself. So we're going to, go back to Falana and Falana Chambers, have more meetings and deliberations, and then also on other institutions, especially those of them that are really grounded on research and data. So we can, and make our presentations and say this last election has not favored women, despite this judgment we got 2 years ago. These are some of the things that we agreed to do last week. And then, of course, we are seizing the opportunity of the ongoing constitutional review going on. We had made a presentation to National Assembly people, on the 5 bills and what Nigerian women want. And then, all 5 of them were thrown out. We are going back again to say that 35% affirmative action must come back. And then if we also need to push for declaring more seats for women. That's what affirmative action is. It's a recognition that these people have been shortchanged. We want to make special spaces available to them. That's what simply it is about. And that's what other countries use to, make up, for the years, of women not being at the center of leadership. And the reason we are more grassroots people is that women need to come to the understanding that, they need to come to the understanding that those spaces belong to them and they need to occupy it. We know that many women, based on the judgment, came out and tried to contest. Some women were bullied and they stepped down. They were bullied by their political parties. I was listening to a woman from another African country, a month ago, and she said to me that, what are you people doing with your political parties? Is there a law that insists that political parties must reserve XYZ seats for women? No, but in our own case, we don't have that situation. Women are just called, to cook and dance and all that. And then when it matters most, when they are having those meetings, we are absent. So women ourselves, we also need to know, the more we keep quiet or even accuse women who are speaking, they're always talking, who sent them, you know that you're changing yourself. Because these spaces we are seeking belongs to you and you should occupy it. It's not about just occupying it, but also contributing to national development. That's why you hear us come to radio, come on television, have these strategic meetings, have this advocacy, and then push the government. That's why we are doing this, because we believe that women deserve more.
Absolutely. Women deserve more. Thank you very much, Ngozi, for your thoughts on the show this evening. I do appreciate you. Now, Zainab, let's talk about this. What do you think about involving more women in ensuring they champion the demand? As you know that women have the numbers and it is only right they are adequately represented, just like Ngozi mentioned, involving women. As much as you want to come together to, clamor for this, there is a need to ensure that women are adequately represented and they are carried along. Over to you, Aminat.
Sorry, so involving more women in champion is not only Madam Ngozi said on involving voice.
Hi, Zainab.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I think it is better now.
Oh, sorry. The demand for affirmative action, but it is very strategic. In myself with what Madam Ngozi.
Zainab, your
because
network is.
Hello?
Okay, Zainab, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, please go ahead now.
Okay. Demand for affirmative action, but it is also very self with what Madam Ngozi said. That if we have more perspective of we women, affirmative action policies, been recognizing it will help also us working together, compliance and implement.
Okay, so Zainab, your network is really poor. So while you fix that, let me go over to Aminat. We're really struggling to hear you on the show. So as you're speaking, your whatever it is you're saying is breaking. So we're finding it really hard to get your thoughts on the show. So please, while you fix the network, and let's move over to Aminat on the show this evening. Now, Aminat, How has the government demonstrated its commitment to upholding the rule of law in implementing the 35% affirmative action ruling over the past 2 years? And what measures do you think we can take to ensure accountability and compliance?
All right, blessing. It's good that we're having these conversations. And quite frankly, government at all levels have not only failed to implement the policy by not meeting the 35% um, women inclusion quota, but have perpetuated systematic gender inequality. And by that reason, uh, the government has also undermined the principles of equitable. Hello?
Yes, I'm with you, Aminat. Please go on.
Hello? Yes, yes. By that reason, the government has also undermined the principles of inequitable representation. Of course, you know that this does not align with international conventions that Nigeria is always quick to ratify. And I give you an example. Example is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, which we all know as CEDAW, and the Maputo Protocol, and these are international legal instruments that emphasize the importance of achieving gender balance in decision making roles as fundamental human rights.
Mm.
You see, when uh, the government's refusal to abide by a court order has caused it has caused major reduction in women's representation in appointed positions. The full implementation of the 35% Affirmative Act for women in appointed positions should be upheld. I mean, the government must be seen to be leading by example and encourage gender parity. If you do this, it will ensure nation building and development because women have value that they bring to the table. Women have strength they bring to the table. When it comes to I mean, more than 50%, let's just say about 50% of the electorate are women. And if you consider women good enough to vote in a democracy, you should also consider them good enough to contribute in nation building and development.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Amina, for your thoughts on the show this evening. I really do appreciate you, especially the part that you said if we consider women enough to vote during elections, we should also consider women good enough to occupy elective positions. Thank you once again for your thoughts on the show today. I really do appreciate you. All right, Rashida, let me come to you on the show this evening. Now, my question to you is how do you assess the effectiveness of current government policies and initiatives aimed at promoting gender diversity and representation in public sector appointment? And I would also want to add that if we look at it critically, what recommendations do you have for improving these efforts?
Thank you very much for this question again. And I'll say that the government needs more partnership. I can't get the first question again, please. But I feel we need more partnership with the government, the civil society, and the government needs to go into more partnership and the importance to women and society at large.
All right. Thank you very much for your on the show this evening, Rashida. You talked about partnership involving more women and then more advocacy. I know you've been talking about advocacy from the beginning of the show. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate you. Honestly, this conversation has been an insightful one, especially the fact that there is a need not to back down. this is not even the best time to back down. Instead of backing down, it is time to intensify efforts to ensure that the gender policy is implemented, to ensure that the 5% affirmative landmark judgment is being followed to the call, and to not, give up in calling the attention of the present government, particularly the present government, because this judgment was passed 2 years ago during the administration of Buhari. But now we have another government, we have a new government in power, and there is a need to constantly remind the government about the need to revisit this judgment to ensure that we make Nigeria a nation where women's voices are being heard far and wide. Once again, thank you very much for being a part of the conversation for today. As we wrap up on this conversation this evening, I would like each and every one of us to give our final words on the show. So, as we ask the question, what do we do next? What next? It's been 2 years since the 5% of affirmative action landmark judgment was passed. What should we do next? So we're starting off with Barrister Marshall Abubakar, the senior lawyer, Falano and Falano Chambers. What's next? What are we supposed to do next? What should be the next course of action?
Well, I believe government is there is no limitation to governance. Whatever government that comes into power inherits both the liabilities and the obligations and rights of the previous government. So I believe the government is as obligated to carry out this basic one. Prior to now, before the judgment was passed, we've had successes in terms of representation and appointment of women into offices. From Jonathan's time till Buhari, we've had a really tumultuous slide backwards in terms of women representation in governance. Unfortunately, Jonathan did better even before the judgment was passed. Buhari did worse even after the judgment was passed during his time, despite his promises to comply with sin. Now, Tinubu is here and he has done what Buhari the judgment was passed. So we look at it, the judgment has given us something to hold on to. Where they are judgment creditors, they are our debtors. Unfortunately, they not paid the debt, and they've disregarded this particular success in a manner they should not. So I think we should not relent in our effort. We've done wonderfully well. Everybody who has been engaged in this judgment from when the matter was filed to this now, till now, we've done a lot, but more can be done. We should keep the tempo, we should keep the fight until victory is achieved. Our comrade, I believe, later continue Victoria has started. If we keep this struggle, we will certainly get the victory. And then we can one day come together and say, oh, it's been a wonderful fight for all of us, and been a very great victory for all of us. So I believe this can be achieved while we keep the engagement going forward.
All right. Thank you very, very much, Barrister Marshall Abubakar, for your thoughts on the show this evening. I do appreciate you, especially the fact that we must not relent on our horse. Thank you once again. Aminat Agbaje, National President, FIDA, what would be your final words on the show this evening?
All right. Blessing, my closing remark will be that go to sleep. We cannot afford to go to sleep. We cannot afford to rest because power is not given, it is taken. And the struggle continues. We cannot say that because the government has appealed against the decision, the judgment, or because we are not getting there, or because it is difficult, and so on and so forth. With all the excuses, all that we need to do is to gather our strength together and continue with the struggle. I tell you, even if it is not in our lifetime, it will happen. Because guess what? The future is female. And that future will soon unfold.
Thank you very much for that one. I love the fact that you're hopeful, saying it will definitely happen. It might not happen now, but it will definitely happen. Zainab Yahaya Tanko, Program Officer, Nigerian Women Trust Fund. Your closing remark on the show this evening.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so my closing remark is that we at Nigerian Women Trust Fund will not relent. We'll keep on fighting. We'll keep the struggle on, and we'll continue to push and engage until we achieve our goal for all of us, as all of us Nigerian women. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Rashida Medjokme, the Program Officer, Sustainable Gender Action Initiative. what would you like to say as your final words on the show? All right, Rashidat, are you there? Okay. Okay, Rashidat.
Yes, please.
Yes. So your closing remark on the show this evening.
Rashidat is on.
Hi, Rashidat. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Give your closing remark on the show this evening.
Okay. Thank you for this eventful meeting. And my closing remark is this: that for government to comply from Sustainable Gender Action Initiative, we will continue with grassroots advocacy, grassroots enlightenment, and grassroots involvement in politics, and continue to collaborate with CSOs until the government complies. So the struggle continues for us in creating more awareness to the public and to the grassroots in general. So we achieve the 30% affirmative policy action. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your thoughts on the show this evening. And finally, we have Ngozi Nwosujuba, Project Director, Vision Spring Initiatives. Your closing remark on the show this evening.
Yeah, so I'd like to align myself with what Marshall has said, and to also say that regression is not a sign of progress. And so the government can actually shock us so that by come April 6, 2025, we have not just that 35% action that we're asking for, maybe 50%, according to the national gender policy that has just been renewed for 2021 and 2026. Thank you.
All right. So thank you very, very much for your thoughts on the show this evening. I really do appreciate you, Barrister Man Women Trust Fund, Rashidat Wuraola Medukme, Program Officer, Sustainable Gender Action Initiative, and of course, Ngozi Nwosujuba, Project Director, Vision Spring Initiatives. Well, there you have it from us this evening as we discuss 2 years after 35% affirmative action landmark judgments. And what we've been able to come up with this evening is that there is a need for us to constantly remind the government about the need to adhere to this judgment that was passed April 6, 2022. It is very, very important that we continue with this struggle. I think everybody on the show this evening agrees to one thing, and that is the fact that there is a need to keep, reminding the government to keep trying so hard to bring in women, to involve women, especially women at the grassroots. And I really do hope and believe that someday, everything that we're hoping for, I look for a particular time in Nigeria where the voices of women are being heard loud and clear. My name is Blessing Agbeto. Thank you very, very much for being a part of the conversation this evening. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
It's a privilege. Thank you, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Blessing, and thank you, everyone. Have a very good night.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. All right. There you have it. Do well to enjoy the rest of your evening for being a part of the conversation. I really do appreciate you. Let's do this again as we keep talking about the need to make Nigeria a safer and better place, particularly for women.